What is meditation according to Swami Sivananda? Meditation is something that most people have heard about, few have any true conception about, and even fewer have actually experienced. Like all other subjective experience, it cannot really be described in words. Let us first define the way that modern psychology has categorized different factors of the mind. The subconscious or unconscious mind can be roughly divided into three groups as follows: the lower mind, the middle mind, and the higher mind. The lower mind is concerned with the activation and coordination of the various activities of the body, such as respiration, circulation, the abdominal organs, and so on. It is also the area of mind which gives rise to instinctive urges, and it is from this part of the mind that complexes, phobias, fears, and obsession manifest. The middle mind is the part of the mind that concerns itself with data that we use during the waking state. It is this part of the mind that analyzes, compares, and reaches conclusions in relation to incoming data. The results of its work manifest to our conscious attention as required. It is this part of the mind that gives us answers. For example, most of us have been faced with a problem which we cannot solve at the time, only to find that the answer surfaces to consciousness at some later time. It is the middle subconscious that has done the problem solving without our awareness. This is the realm of rational or intellectual thinking. The higher mind is the area of so called superconscious activity. It is the source of intuition, inspiration, bliss, and transcendental experiences. It is the from this reason that geniuses derive their flashes of creativity. It is the source of deeper knowledge. Throughout our waking hours, we have consciousness of certain phenomena. We are conscious only of a small part of the activities of the mind, usually in the realms of the middle mind. It is this consciousness that is allowing you to read these words and to be aware of their meaning. Another part of the mind is the collective unconscious that Carl Jung did much to bring to scientific acceptance. It is in this part of the mind that we have records of our evolutionary past. It contains records of the activities of our ancestors and the archetypes. It is the part of the mind that links us to all other human beings because it is the blueprint of our common past. Behind all these different parts of the mind is the self or the very core of existence. It is the self that illuminates everything that we do, though we are not aware of it. Most of us assume that the center of our being is the ego, yet the ego is really no more than another part of the mind. It is the self that illuminates even the ego. So, what happens when we meditate? When we meditate, we are able to take our consciousness to the different parts of our mind. Normally, as we have already explained, our consciousness is confined to surface activity in small areas of the middle or rational parts of the unconscious. We are able to move away from intellectualization during meditation. It is the usual experience of most people who start to meditate that they see grotesque apparitions or they become aware of deep rooted complexes that they perhaps did not know existed within them. They realize they have fears that they were not aware of before. The reason is that the consciousness is now functioning in the domain of the lower mind. The consciousness is now highlighting complexes, fears, etc., of which it was not previously aware. Before, it was only aware of the manifestations of these fears in the form of anger, hatred, depression, etc. Once these deep rooted complexes are confronted, they can be removed and greater happiness attained in life. Also, many people become very aware of the internal processes of their body during meditation. This is because the consciousness becomes aware of the activities that control these bodily functions. Higher stages of meditation are difficult to attain if we don't remove most of the compulsive fear that we have in the lower mind. It is not possible to go into deeper state of meditation because these complexes are so compulsive that they seem to almost automatically draw the consciousness to this attention. Though there are many other places where the consciousness can go, it seems to be drawn like iron to a magnet to the lower mind's activities. It seems to take perverse delight in dwelling on our fears, phobias, and anxieties. In higher state of meditation, the consciousness moves to the higher mind or the region of superconsciousness. The consciousness rises above rational thoughts and we see the activities that seem to be closer to reality. The meditator enters the dimensions of inspiration and illumination. One starts to explore the deeper truths and aspects of existence. One enters new spheres, new lands of existence, which until this time seemed impossible and mere figments of the imagination. The culmination of meditation is self realization. This occurs when even the higher mind is transcended. The consciousness leaves the exploration of the mind and identifies with the central core of one's existence, the self. At this point, it becomes pure consciousness. When a person achieves self realization, it means that he has contacted his central being and now identifies his existence, his life, from the viewpoint of the self and not from the standpoint of the ego. When he acts from the center of his being, the body and mind operate almost as separate entities. The mind and body cease to be the real him, they are merely manifestations of the self, his true identity. So, it can be seen that the aim of meditation is to explore the different regions of the mind and eventually to transcend the mind completely. According to Swami Sivananda, passive and active meditation. There are two types of meditation, passive and active. Active meditation is that which occurs when one performs one's daily duties, when one walks, talks, eats, and so on. This, in fact, is the aim of yoga, to allow one to meditate while being involved in worldly activities. It doesn't mean that the activities will not be done or not done with enthusiasm. In fact, the work or external activities will be performed with more efficiency and energy. Passive meditation is the aim of sitting in one pose and performing meditational practice. Fixing the mind on a meditational practice, an object, sound or breath, a picture, and so on. This calms the mind and makes it introverted. Success in stage 1 automatically leads to the free flow of thoughts, complexes, visions, memories, etc. From unconscious realms of the mind, it is possible now to probe the personality and lower mind and to remove undesirable contents. When the lower mind has been fully explored, one then starts to explore the superconscious realms. Now, real meditation begins. The limitless storehouse of knowledge and energy within each of us starts to show itself spontaneously. Eventually, one's being starts to tune in with the cosmos and everything around us. Eventually, even the mind is transcended and the meditator attains oneness with the Supreme Consciousness. The goal of real self realization is reached. Successful passive meditation will automatically lead to active meditation for the deeper one's dives into the mind. In passive meditation, the more one is likely to be able to live a perpetual meditational state even while performing worldly duties. In fact, the deeper one dives into the mind during passive meditation, the more powerful the surface expression in the form of external activities will become. As one explores the mind, it becomes more powerful. As such, one's life, work, etc., becomes more powerful and one is able to accomplish things that were impossible before. Eventually, passive meditation becomes superfluous. This is when one attains self realization. At this stage, the individual lives completely according to the deepest inner and spiritual values, yet at the same time is able to express himself in the outside world. In this situation, the self realized person is able to live both a spiritual and material life without conflict. In this state, there is a continuous and spontaneous experience of active meditation. People have a tendency to identify completely with objects of perception. For example, we see a beautiful sunset, our whole consciousness awareness is wrapped up in it, so that we completely forget our own identity. We forget the fact that we are experiencing the spectacle. As such, how can we really experience the joy of the sunset? The individual, the subject, the experiencer forgets his nature, for it is overshadowed by the objects of perception. The consciousness has identified with the object to the exclusion of the subject. The ideal situation is where the sunset or any other object is experienced, yet at the same time the awareness of oneself is not lost. One should feel the objective experience of the perceiver. In this way, the spiritual feeling of experiencing will be heightened. The self or soul now consciously knows the experience of the subject. The bliss of the self can now show itself in response to the outer objective experience. Before, the nature of the self was overshadowed by the experience of the object. Now the self can shine in its full pristine glory. This should apply to our whole material existence. We should experience external phenomena, for this is part of life, yet we should supplement our outer life with the inner life. In this way, we will be able to enjoy the material life more fully. At the moment, most of us live an almost totally extroverted life through ignorance. We don't realize the ocean of bliss that exists in the inner depths of our being. One of the aims of meditation is to take our consciousness away from the external entanglements, even for a short time, and direct it inwards. The aim is to give a glimpse of the inner life and eventually to connect it with the outer life. This connection always exists, yet we are never conscious of the fact. Meditation makes us conscious of the connection and leads to spiritual happiness and peace. It makes us aware of the vital importance of the subjective experience, the inner, essential nature that is our heritage. Meditation is the legacy of all. It is something that we all should and are able to experience spontaneously, yet we cannot because of the way we live. We are continually in a state of tension because we don't know ourselves, our inner nature. We are continually trying to do things because we feel we ought to, even though it might be contrary to our nature. There is a continual conflict between that which is and that which we want. We are always motivated to become something instead of just being. If we could only bring about a unity between what we are and what we want, then meditation would occur spontaneously. The knowledge that most of us experience is in the form of intellectual knowledge. It is derived from the rational part of our mind. This is really a form of relative knowledge. It is not real knowledge. It consists of a limited field of facts and figures from which we deduce theories, concepts, and our relationships with our environment. This is the form of scientific, technological, philosophical, and other ways of reasoning which come from the rational mind. The fallacy is that the original assumptions are fundamentally adequate in themselves, yet we find that knowledge is of this type is continually being proved wrong as new light is thrown on the subject. Let's take an example from science. Newton expounded the theory of gravitation, which was eventually accepted as being absolutely true. However, a few centuries later, Einstein showed in his theory that gravity doesn't exist as such. Of course, this doesn't only apply to science, it applies to every intellectual act that we perform. Any conclusion that we come to through the rational mind can be superseded in the light of new information. We can also experience knowledge in the form of feeling or emotion. One can mentally feel the truth of an idea. At the same time, one can also emotionally sense that something is true. Many people mistake this type of knowledge for intuitive knowledge. Beyond emotional and intellectual knowledge, there is another type of knowledge. This type of knowledge is achieved in states of meditation and is a more real form of knowledge. It is intuitive knowledge that comprehends the totality of a situation. Unlike rational knowledge, which tries to build up a complete picture of the whole from the parts, intuition directly apprehends the whole, the totality. It comes from the superconscious part of the mind, of which we are usually unaware. This type of knowledge depends neither on the intellect nor on the emotions, which tend to color or wrap the real form of knowledge. Meditation doesn't depend on personal projection. If it did, then it would not be meditation. During meditation, a link is made between the higher regions of mind associated with the so-called expansion of consciousness, the superconsciousness part of the mind, and the field of consciousness or awareness, the so-called waking consciousness. This link allows higher mental vibrations to be perceived by the consciousness of the meditator. These subtle higher vibrations exist all the time, yet they are not normally perceptible. Sometimes they are seen on rare occasions in the form of intuitive flashes, inspirations, creative illumination, etc. We are normally unaware of these vibrations, truths, and higher knowledge because of the impure, complex, redundant state of our minds. These higher form of knowledge, higher vibrations show more of the underlying cause and truth behind the manifestations that we see in our everyday lives. The deeper aspect of life show themselves during meditation. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.